Advisor in the Center for Student Involvement. So again, like Cristian said, excited to have you join us today and have some good dialogue around officer transitions.
Okay. So Katia, just to get this very conversational based, if you just want to provide a little bit more about yourself, like your name, what is your current position, and is that an incoming or outgoing position? What org are you representing, and what do you really hope to learn today or be able to at least take away from our presentation?
Yeah, so my name is Katia. I'm representing Interaxon, which is an outreach club for providing educational outreach for neuroscience to the K-12 schools in San Diego. I was previously webmaster, but now I got promoted to external vice president. So it was kind of on this to help me like learn how to transition my roles and also help other members of my my organization also transition through roles. So
nice, that's exciting. External VP. So would that role be for the fall quarter?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, I really appreciate you sharing that information. I think it gives Chloe and I some perspective of how can we be supportive during this presentation. And so again, if you have any questions during this, feel free to just speak out. And so I'll pass it on to Chloe.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. And then just to clarify, it sounded like you were an officer just in a different role previously? Awesome. Yes. Do you want to share, so when you are now transitioning, when you got transitioned to that role in the beginning, what would you say went well or didn't go well in your first transition into your first officer role?
Yeah, well, it was my first time actually being in a role at a higher education organization. And so I guess there wasn't a webmaster before me, and so it was like a whole new role that I kind of had to invent myself. Obviously I had help with my other leadership, like position teammates, but it was kind of difficult just to start like a whole new thing in an organization.
Absolutely. I can only imagine without like no frame or context. So, you know, that position, I can only imagine that was a challenging transition. So I think that's good for us to know too, is navigating a whole new role as another layer to officer transition. So we're glad you made it through it. It sounds like you made it a successful position after you got kind of the start of it, and now you're onto a newer and different role, which is exciting. So cool. To get us started, we just wanted to take a little bit of time on talking about what are the benefits of a successful leadership transition. And so we wanted to see if you had any thoughts about why you believe officer transitions are important.
Yeah, so as I was saying, I was going into a new role that I had not really heard of before. And so I think now that I can help the next person that's going into that role and help them have a better experience and be more comfortable actually like being successful in that role, I guess you could say. So
yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. That's important. So Cristian, if you want to click the next thing. Often when thinking about officer transitions, this is typically the only time that our outgoing officers can share insights, their wealth of knowledge to our incoming officers. So it really serves as a time for our outgoing officers to pass the baton to our incoming officers, if you will. We have noted down specifically a few benefits that I'm going to be highlighting today in the text of the presentation. So first is that new officers who have a positive and successful transition and can gain the knowledge they need to succeed are more likely to be confident and productive in their role. I'm not sure if you, I mean, it sounds like you were kind of just thrown into a role and you didn't have a whole lot of direction or guidance or context to that position, and I believe it could have been pretty challenging. So we hope that today you're able to take away some strategies to help provide that direction to your incoming officer team. Additionally, it is common for there to be confusion when there is officer turnover. However, when organizations have and execute a positive officer transition plan, this confusion can be mitigated and avoided completely. Next is that successful transitions promote the continuation of goals and accomplishments by passing on the work and messages to the next group of officers who will hopefully continue down their path to their predecessors have started on. And ultimately, for outgoing officers, transitions can be a sense of accomplishment and closure for all of the hard work and dedication they have put in, and end their term as an officer on a positive note. So we don't want them to just like put in that work for a year and then just be like, okay, cool, I'm done. We really want them to end their role with like a clear and definitive end by passing on their knowledge to their successors. And so lastly, when student organizations navigate a successful leadership transition, it continues the sustainability of the group by promoting the growth of your organization and continuing the recognition status of the organization on campus. If officers are not successfully transitioned, the group may be at risk of missing re-registration deadlines, failing to complete projects or annual programs, and overall stunt the success of the group. So yeah. Definitely was still on mute. Great. So now we're going to get into some definite checklist tasks that our outgoing officers should be facilitating or doing before they leave their role. And so first and foremost is always creating and updating a transition binder. And this can be done in either hard copy or digitally throughout the year. We would say through the lessons we're learning through COVID-19, our staff would encourage the use of a shared drive, a Google Shared Drive, or a virtual transition platform. So not sure if you've started to work on a transition binder or not. Wanted to see if you had begun that process.
Yeah, I actually have a document that kind of helps, it's a Google document, nothing too fancy, that helps the next publicist or webmaster to like log in or like how to update the website and everything. Nothing too like fancy, just a Google Doc, but hopefully that will help.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I've been working with my officers on is I'm sure you're a part of an executive board team. It's helpful if like your executive board all have like a Google folder for each of their positions that maybe the whole board can see and have access to with the transition notes and things like that. Next is finish all correspondence that you can. So this is ensuring that outgoing officers wrap up their projects and their correspondence as best as possible and don't kind of just like dip and leave and just leave everyone hanging. It's making sure you put a finish to all projects and correspondence. And then next is like, it sounds like you've already started a Google document, but preparing an end of year report, incorporating the organization's goals, activities, and accomplishments. Creating a detailed end of year report that highlights the specific goals, activities, and accomplishments can really serve as a reflection to pass on to the incoming officers to help guide them throughout their new term. I'm going to pass it to Cristian now.
Yeah, and so the last 4 bullet points are really something that you can do now as we finish spring quarter, is really trying to review and look back on your experience as an officer, especially when you have finished the webmaster. And so identifying areas of your responsibilities, people that you have met, any phone numbers, details that you have kept that you which someone gave to you last year, but that you can give to this new officer coming in this fall quarter. We also hope that you can review some of those materials from your organization, such as bylaws, constitutions, any goals that folks have had in your previous roles that you can continue to give to the incoming web officer, webmaster, or even as you start your external VP, of really looking at what that is. And so we also hope that folks who are outgoing their position to maybe look at their constitution, their bylaws, what are things that are effective to have continuity and sustainability in their organization, but really to have that formal transition as we are providing today, that you can provide to your other principal members or members coming into your organization. And it sounds that you are in a new role, but we hope that if there is another webmaster, that you can be there to support them through their process if they have any questions, any concerns that they may be having, and that you don't just drop off the edge of the earth, as to say, from the PowerPoint. And so we hope that these suggestions may be beneficial for you as you finish the webmaster position and start your external VP role within your organization. And so I'm sure these might be common for you or for other folks, but something to just consider as you finish your term within that role as a webmaster, looking at these questions, what was really valuable to yourself in your position, and thinking about, the obstacles that you have had throughout your term that you probably never thought of. And so these are things to consider as you maybe meet a future webmaster to allow them to have that opportunity of conversation about those obstacles that you had. And those may be obstacles that happen throughout your term. Those may be obstacles that you already knew coming into that role, but that you overcame those for your responsibilities. Um, as a webmaster, especially right now through COVID, like what are things that did work or didn't work for your position, but that can be improved for a new officer coming in? I think we're all learning how to do virtual platforms. And I'm sure as a webmaster, there's a lot of virtual and social media things. And so those are aspects that you can think of that you can provide to your incoming officer. And then the last two is like, what did you consider the greatest responsibilities of your position? And what are things like resources that were helpful for you during your time as a webmaster? And so as you think about that, just kind of reflect and consider like how can that be beneficial for a new individual coming into their role? And then I will pass on to Chloe.
All right, so now we're going to start thinking about what should be the tasks of our incoming officers. What things do we want them to start putting together, be thinking about, be responsible for as they're transitioning into their new roles. And so first and foremost, it's important that all incoming officers are familiar with the organization's bylaws, policies, and procedures for the group, because they're going to be the ones who are responsible for upkeeping and holding the group accountable for all these operations. So I've been in a few situations where some of the officers I'm meeting with don't even know what's in their bylaws, and it's really not helpful because then they start to miss some of the key practices of the organization. Next, I know, I believe you are a principal member currently for the organization. Awesome. Would you say that you were previously a part of the re-registration or the registration process for your organization?
I personally wasn't involved with reorganization process, more like the principal and the president and the vice president. I was more just kind of like, I've been shown the Constitution and everything, but I wasn't in charge of re-registering.
Awesome. Okay, good to know. So then it sounds like this is a responsibility for your president and vice president, but I'm not sure if they're familiar with the incoming president and vice president, but if they aren't, just making sure that it's on their radar, that the current principal members of the organization will be contacted in the middle of August about the re-registration process, and that will open up in the middle of August and will close week 5 of fall quarter. So they do have a lot of time to re-register the organization, but it's really important that they're checking their emails over summer, keeping in mind the information that needs to get passed on to specific officers in charge of the registration process. Just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. It would also be helpful to review the administrative paperwork that outgoing officers have created so the board can continue to get a stronger feel on how to run the organization. Next is it's extremely beneficial to host a group transition retreat between incoming and outgoing officers. So is your organization looking at hosting or facilitating that type of experience?
Oh, can you repeat that? Sorry.
No, you're fine. Is your group planning on hosting an officer transition retreat as a whole with the outgoing board and the incoming board?
I do hope so. Right now that I've just really they've just announced that I will be the new vice president, and so that's all I know so far, but hopefully we'll be able to have a retreat soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say when you go back to your group, take back with them the notes that a transition retreat between incoming and outgoing officers is extremely helpful to get everybody on the same page, to make sure that the outgoing officers can pass on their notes and their guidance to the incoming board. And so I would say if there can't be a transition retreat for outgoing officers and incoming officers. At the bare minimum, it would be really helpful for the new officers to at least have a new board retreat where they can become on the same page with their goals, the operations, and even like scheduling for the year. So we would stress the importance of a transition retreat as a whole for the group or just for the incoming officers. We also believe it is in the importance of having one-on-one meetings with outgoing officers. So this would be a great follow-up to a transition retreat or in place of a transition retreat, where this one-on-one time could serve as more in-depth meeting with the outgoing officer sharing their knowledge to the person coming into their role. And then in thinking of an officer retreat, hopefully your group can have one, but this would be a space where the new officers can come together and set new goals for the board as a whole, as well as for their individual positions. And so we'll get into goal setting just a little bit later in the presentation.
Great, thank you, Chloe. And so again, these are just questions to consider, especially now that you are a new VP. This might be helpful for you to reflect and to think about over the summer as you begin, the fall quarter with a new academic year, a new leadership board. And so for yourself, like, what are things that you have to know about your own position? Are there certain forms that you have to complete? Certain reports, from your organization that is saved on a Google Drive? How are the meetings conducted? Is it through minutes? Is it through obviously in person, but now we might have to do over Zoom? And what kind of events do we have for our organization that needs to be completed in the fall quarter or the winter and spring as we move forward? Checking those timelines and duties of your own position. And so considering like, what are things that I should know, that I need to know to complete for this role, and following up with your new president or current president about that transition and ensuring that you have the resources for your role. Who are the individuals that you should get to know as a vice president of your organization? Is it other stakeholders from the community? Is it, your exec board and their leadership? Is it certain members who want to get involved through the fall quarter or maybe over the summer? What are the resources and services provided to your organization? And so that is why we have these webinars to provide funding, to provide those Center for Student Involvement resources to students to ensure that we are completing registration tasks and TAPs. And so the second to last one is, who is my community advisor and CSI advisor? I think for us, we think it's really critical that you build that relationship with your community advisor because they will be supporting you throughout the entire academic year. And I'm sure that your advisor from the Center for Student Involvement is also willing to support you and provide the resources, the forms, deadlines for your organization. And so again, like Chloe said, you will get an email in August about re-registration for your organization and the steps that you need to take to complete that. And so we also understand that being a student leader, going to school as well, having a personal life, being involved with extracurricular activities might be very demanding. And so we want to ensure that you ask yourself, how do you do self-care? Because we know it can get busy, it can get overwhelming with stress. And so ensuring that you can look back on that list of your self-care, things that you do, such as going to the beach or playing music, or just taking off getting off the computer and just enjoying a night with a movie or with your friends. And so ensuring that you ask these questions to yourself so that you can be as successful as possible in your new role as VP.
So officer transitions are most successful when they are paired with goal setting for the organization, the officer team, and each individual officer. So we just want to spend some time talking about goal setting. Things to keep in mind is when you are working with a group to create shared goals, whether that be with the entire organization or just the officer team, it's important to create guidelines up front for the purpose of the conversation and expectations for everyone involved. So I'm not sure if in your general board meetings or your officer meetings, you all have created some community guidelines that will set the tone for the space. But this will help reduce, with community guidelines, this will help reduce people speaking over each other and help everyone stay on track with the conversation. So examples of guidelines can always be one mic, one speaker, so there's only one person speaking at a time. Just wanted to put that out there when you're having those in-group conversations. Group goal setting can provide your organization with many benefits, including gaining buy-in from fellow organization members to accomplish goals, creating expectations to which you can hold members accountable to, building trust and respect between your officer team, and fostering inclusion and community within the organization. So when you are in the group goal setting space, we wanted to present some questions for your group to be asking each other to help build those goals and guide those goals. So those could be like, what is the core purpose of the organization? What drives the way we operate? Even what are our values as an organization that we want to demonstrate throughout our work? How can officers fulfill their purposes? What initiatives did the previous exec board have to be able to continue those and work off of those initiatives? And then what would you as a group like to achieve throughout the next academic year? What does the schedule of the next year look like? So you can schedule out the whole academic year, or you can schedule it quarter by quarter. What are important dates that you all want to lock down so everybody's aware of those? And then what is the priority or area of focus that your organization would like to focus on in improving looking forward?
I was on mute. Sorry about that. The last step as you move forward with a transition is also not only thinking about the entire exec board goal setting and the process of meeting together as a group, but also your individual goals for your role. I think for you, Katia, as VP, so asking yourself, like, what legacy do you want to leave in your officer role? And so when you're done with with the role in the future, looking back, what can you say that you accomplished that benefited the community and your organization? Thinking about what is a priority for your position to support the entire organization. And so with leadership, the higher you go in the exec board, there are more responsibilities. And so as VP, how can you support the entire exec board or the president itself to be successful together? And so that's also ensuring your own priorities for your position and meeting those deadlines all together. And I'm sure that you've heard about this, but we always encourage SMART goals. And so every time you have a goal, what goal, how's that goal specific? Is that goal measurable? And so maybe adding some numbers. Is it attainable? Is it realistic? And what does the timeline look like? And so when we think about SMART goals, you can say, in 2 months, I want to complete XYZ event through supporting the webmaster or another position, meeting twice a week to ensure that we meet that goal. And so adding those numbers, adding a timeline might be more beneficial and supportive for you to reach that goal. And then lastly, there are 2 more slides, but we wanted to know for you, Katia, what are some strategies that if you know of, that your organization is using to support some transitions moving forward?
So from my last transition from going to an actual role, we were able to talk through email. And before the school year started, we actually had a group meeting, and just to kind of discuss how we are and what our goals were for the year. So maybe going into this next coming year with everything going on with COVID, probably a webinar or a Zoom meeting with all the other officers, and we can go over goals again, what exactly we want to do and how we can adapt to this new environment we're in.
Yeah, I think that's very important, is being able to adapt. And so hopefully still having officer transitions through Zoom, through a Google Drive, being able to, if people are comfortable, being able to text each other and ensure that they're able to have those transitions. is beneficial. And then the last piece, again, we've really mentioned this a few times, is virtual opportunities. And so we want to ensure that we are providing you all the resources and the guidance to have successful transitions. And those might look very different than we used to have them in person. And so this might be very similar to the previous question, but understanding how are you navigating and preparing for virtual transitions yourself?
Yeah, so I guess with the whole like both situation we're in right now, Zoom can be really helpful, especially because our whole goal as an organization is to provide educational outreach to schools. And so maybe setting up like a time where instead of actually going physically to the school, we can have Zoom meetings with like a classroom, and we can coordinate how that would help. And also for preparing for virtual transitions, we can work more with like other like things besides Zoom, maybe more like a Dropbox or like Google Docs, more just to prepare for virtual transitions.
Yeah, definitely. That's very beneficial. I know a lot of folks are using Zoom right now, which is a great platform, but not everyone may have Zoom. And so maybe looking into like FaceTime or group chats that might be beneficial for your organization, maybe for transitions. And I know email is always very helpful. So whenever you want to have an event in the fall quarter, you can email those stakeholders and asking them, can we still have this event virtually? It'd be beneficial for our students, and vice versa. I think being very creative at this moment is needed during COVID. And so that is our presentation. I know it's very brief, but we also still want to open it up for you if you have any questions, any concerns that you may have moving forward. I'm going to stop the recording so that way we can stop the PowerPoint and we can just have a conversation.